Yesterday was supposed to be the best day of my life. Moving into my first house, keys fresh from closing, my daughter Riley already planning her new bedroom. Instead, I'm looking at a police car parked in my driveway. I'm Marcus, single dad, electrician. Took me 8 years of double shifts to save for this little place in Willowbrook Estates. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. Officer Martinez walks over. "Sir, you need to leave immediately." "Leave? This is my house, I have the deed." That's when she appears. Vivian Ashworth, HOA president. Perfect blonde bob, clipboard like a weapon, smile sharp as a knife. "You can't live here," she says loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "People like you don't belong in Willowbrook. We have standards." My 8-year-old daughter started crying in the truck when she heard that. But what Vivian didn't know was that I was about to uncover a criminal conspiracy that would land her in federal prison and expose the biggest HOA fraud scheme in state history. This is how one single dad took down an entire corrupt system. Trust me, it gets absolutely insane. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. 3 months ago, I was scrolling Zillow when I saw it. A foreclosed house in Willowbrook Estates for $180,000. Not exactly a mansion, but 3 bedrooms and something Riley and I could finally call ours. I'm an electrician, single dad since my divorce 4 years ago. Riley, my 8-year-old, stays with her mom during school but spends every other weekend and breaks with me. Right now, that means her sleeping on a pull-out couch in my cramped apartment while I work on electrical panels at the kitchen table. Not exactly father of the year material, but I've been grinding. 15 years in electrical work, taking every overtime shift, every weekend emergency call. $47,000, saved over 8 years. Every dollar earned fixing someone else's problems so I could finally fix my own. This house needed work. Peeling paint, carpet older than dial-up internet, wiring that probably violated 3 building codes, but I could handle that. What I couldn't handle was watching Riley pretend the pull-out couch was just as good as a real bed for one more visit. Closing day, 3 weeks ago. Realtor Cheryl walked me through standard paperwork, property taxes, insurance, and, just a small HOA fee, $150 monthly. They maintain common areas, keep properties nice. Seemed fair. I signed everything, got my keys, and spent 3 weeks planning Riley's room. Pink paint, her favorite since kindergarten. The window overlooking the backyard where she could watch birds during her weekend visits. Moving day arrives. Borrowed Tommy's truck, loaded my modest furniture, couch, 2 beds, boxes containing our entire life. The neighbors were out doing yard work, but nobody acknowledged me. Too busy with their perfect lawns, I figured. Then I met her. Vivian Ashworth appeared before I'd unloaded the first box. Perfect makeup at 9 a.m. Saturday, blonde hair shellacked in place, clutching a thick binder wrapped in plastic like it contained state secrets. The woman looked like she'd been pressed in a dry cleaner. "Good morning?" Her smile could have frozen coffee. "I'm Vivian, HOA president. We need to discuss community guidelines." She flipped through that binder like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Commercial vehicles are prohibited in driveways." She pointed at my F-150 with its basic toolbox. "That violates our height restrictions." The morning air suddenly smelled like fresh concrete and judgment. "It's just a work truck," I said, "with commercial equipment." She showed me some city ordinance printout. "We maintain property values here." Then she looked at my Carhartt jacket and steel-toed boots. "We also maintain certain standards about residential compatibility." That pause. That fucking pause told me everything. I asked about the previous owner. "Mr. Henderson was much more suited to our community," she said. "Professional appearance, appropriate vehicle, understood expectations." Behind her, I noticed something weird. 3 houses down, a guy was washing a white panel van with Peterson Plumbing painted on the side. In his driveway, no citation, no Vivian marching over with her binder. "What about Peterson's van?" I asked. Her face tightened. "That's different. He's established here, understands how things work." The dismissal in her voice could have cut glass. As she walked away, clipboard tucked like evidence, I watched her stop at my next-door neighbor's house. Mrs. Ivy opened the door, and they both looked back at me. Vivian's animated gesturing, Mrs. Ivy's uncomfortable nodding. I didn't need to hear the words to understand the conversation. Standing in my driveway, surrounded by boxes containing 8 years of dreams, the taste of diesel exhaust mixing with the bitter realization that this wasn't about truck heights or toolboxes. This was about me not matching their picture of who belonged in Willowbrook Estates. But I had the deed, I had rights, and somewhere inside, Riley's future bedroom was waiting. I just didn't know I was walking into a war. The next morning, I woke up to a bright orange notice taped to my front door. Violation notice number 1 in bold red letters. My truck had been observed violating community standards for 18 consecutive hours. Fine, $200, 18 hours. Someone had been watching my house with a stopwatch. I called the number, got Vivian's voicemail. Sweet as corn syrup, you've reached Willowbrook Estates HOA. Your call is important to us. Important enough to find me, apparently. Riley was coming for the weekend, and I'd planned to show her the progress on her room. Instead, I spent Saturday morning staring at violation notice number 2 taped next to the first one. This time with photographs, black and white shots of my truck from 3 angles, time-stamped like evidence in a murder case. $500 fine for failure to comply. The bitter taste of injustice mixed with my morning coffee as I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, diving into HOA law. My electrician's brain works like this. When there's a problem in the system, you trace it back to the source. So I started tracing. Turns out there's this thing called selective enforcement. Back when I was going through my divorce, my lawyer mentioned it. If rules aren't applied equally to everyone, they're legally unenforceable. Something about equal protection under the law made sense to me, so I started documenting everything. Tuesday. Peterson's plumbing van still parked in his driveway. No citation. Wednesday. The Hendersons' fence had 3 broken slats. Their grass was 2 weeks overgrown. No orange notices. Thursday. Mrs. Rodriguez's husband unloaded concrete bags from his landscaping truck at 6 p.m., left it parked overnight. Commercial vehicle, commercial equipment. Vivian drove past twice that evening. I watched from my window, but never stopped. The pattern was clear as a short circuit. Friday's mail brought the nuclear option. Emergency HOA board meeting, scheduled for Saturday. Topic: declining neighborhood standards and immediate remediation. They were calling a meeting about me. Saturday morning, I arrived early at the community center. Through the windows, I watched Vivian setting up like she was presenting a corporate takeover. Laptop, projector, printed handouts for the 3 other board members who looked about as enthusiastic as people waiting for root canals. I couldn't hear everything, but the visual was enough. Slide after slide of my truck, my work clothes, me carrying electrical supplies. The woman had been stalking me with a camera. The final slide showed a graph, property values, before and after inappropriate resident placement. Board member Patricia raised her hand. Vivian, isn't this excessive? It's just a pickup truck. Vivian's smile could have frozen hell. Patricia, when standards slip, values follow. The HOA has authority to place liens on non-compliant properties. Daily fines accumulate until compliance is achieved or... Dramatic pause. Alternative solutions become necessary. Alternative solutions. Foreclosure. We've handled situations like this before, she continued, and the cold certainty in her voice made my chest tight. Some residents simply don't understand community expectations. That phrase, handled situations like this before, stuck in my brain like a splinter. How many times had they done this? Saturday afternoon, I drove to the county clerk's office. Cost me $40 and 3 hours in plastic chairs that squeaked every time I moved, but I requested every HOA violation notice issued in the past year. The results hit me like touching a live wire. 12 violations, 7 different families, every single one targeting people who didn't fit Willowbrook's country club aesthetic. Young couple with a motorcycle, elderly veteran with a medical van, single mom whose kids were too loud during daycare hours. But here's what made my electrician brain start sparking. 5 of those 7 families had sold their homes within 6 months, all to the same buyer, Henderson Real Estate Holdings. Henderson, the compatible previous owner Vivian kept praising. I pulled property records with shaking hands. Henderson Real Estate Holdings, LLC. Owner, Derek Ashworth, Vivian's husband. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about property values or community standards. This was systematic. harass undesirable residents until they're forced to sell below market value, then flip the properties to approved buyers at full price. Sunday morning, coming home with groceries for Riley's visit, I found my mailbox knocked over. My phone's security app had caught everything. White BMW, 2 a.m., slow drive-by, then a return trip with a brief stop. Clear shot of the license plate. Vivian's car. Mrs. Ivy appeared at her fence while I was uprighting the mailbox, her jasmine perfume mixing with the morning dew. "She did the same thing to the Rodriguez family," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "First the mailbox, then the garden, then someone threw rocks at their windows. They were gone in 6 months." Standing there in my driveway, tasting the metallic tang of anger while breathing in Mrs. Ivy's flowers, I realized I wasn't just fighting an HOA bully. I was fighting an organized criminal enterprise that had been systematically cleansing this neighborhood of anyone who didn't fit their vision. But they'd made one mistake. They'd targeted an electrician who knew how to trace problems to their source. Time to short-circuit their whole operation. Monday morning, I was elbow deep under Mrs. Patterson's kitchen sink when my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach drop. City code enforcement. "Mr. Brennan, Janet Torres here. We've received a complaint about illegal business operations at your residence. Need to schedule an inspection." I nearly dropped my wrench into the garbage disposal. Business operations? Complaint alleges commercial equipment storage and business activity in a residential zone. Includes photographs. Her tone was professionally neutral, but something underneath suggested she'd seen this playbook before. "Available this afternoon?" The metallic taste of panic mixed with the musty smell of old pipes as I finished the job and headed home to wait for the hammer to fall. Janet Torres arrived in a white city truck, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Hispanic woman, maybe 40, with the exhausted expression of someone who'd spent 15 years separating real violations from neighborhood vendettas. "Mr. Brennan, mind showing me your setup?" I led her to the garage where my personal electrical supplies sat on metal shelving. Basic stuff I'd accumulated over the years. Wire nuts, testing equipment, extension cords. Nothing you wouldn't find in any serious DIYer's garage. She photographed everything methodically, made notes on her clipboard, then asked the questions I'd been dreading. "Pull permits for any electrical work on the property?" "Always, when code requires it." "Store any hazardous materials, chemicals, industrial equipment?" "Just basic tools and supplies." She closed her clipboard with a sharp snap that echoed off the concrete floor. "Well, Mr. Brennan, I don't see any zoning violations here." Then looking directly toward where Vivian's house sat like a surveillance post behind perfectly trimmed hedges. "Looks like someone wasted both our time today." The dismissal in her voice told me everything about what she thought of this complaint. As Janet's truck disappeared down the street, I caught movement in Vivian's front window, curtains dropping back into place. She'd been watching the whole performance, probably expecting me to be cited and fined into submission. Instead, I'd just gained an unexpected ally who'd seen through the harassment for exactly what it was. That evening, fueled by anger and determination, I started reaching out to Vivian's other victims. Maria Rodriguez responded to my Facebook message within an hour. "OMG, yes, we lost $15,000 selling below market just to escape that psycho. Do you have evidence?" Soon I was connected with 5 other families who'd been systematically driven out. Each story followed an identical script: escalating violations, mysterious property damage, financial pressure until selling became the only escape route. But Sarah Kim, the motorcycle owner, dropped the real bombshell. She worked in real estate and had kept meticulous records. "Derek Ashworth's company bought our house for $165,000, she told me over the phone while I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by takeout containers and legal documents. Market value was $195,000. 3 months later, they flipped it to some downtown lawyer for $210,000. The smell of cold Chinese food mixed with the bitter realization of how deep this went. How many properties has he done this with? 8 houses in 3 years, all in Willowbrook. Same pattern every time. HOA creates problems, owners sell cheap to escape, Derek's company swoops in with cash offers. My electrician brain started calculating. 8 houses, averaged $25,000 below market each, plus resale profits. They were running a $250,000 scam using the HOA as their collection agency. Wednesday's mail brought another emergency board meeting notice, but this time the agenda made my blood pressure spike. Special assessment proposal, $5,000 per household for security improvements and infrastructure upgrades. The fine print was where they twisted the knife. Assessment may be waived for residents demonstrating full compliance with community standards. Translation: everyone pays except Vivian's favorites. For someone already facing $700 in bogus fines, another $5,000 would be financially devastating, which was exactly the point. But that evening my phone rang with an unexpected call. Patricia from the board, her voice nervous but determined. "Marcus? I got your number from the directory. I wanted to warn you about tomorrow's meeting." "What kind of warning?" "The assessment timing feels targeted. A few of us are asking uncomfortable questions about why security improvements are only needed in your section, and why our reserve fund shows $12,000 when it should have $85,000. The taste of cheap instant coffee turned to ash in my mouth. Where's the missing $73,000? Vivian claims it was spent on approved community enhancements, but nobody remembers approving anything close to that amount. The financial records are sparse. Thursday night, insomnia hit hard. I spread everything across my kitchen table like evidence in a crime drama. Property records, violation notices, financial statements, emails from other victims. Started connecting dots with colored pens, tracing money flows and timelines. The pattern emerged like a wiring diagram. HOA funds disappear. Vivian targets undesirable residents. Harassment escalates until families sell cheap. Derek's company profits from below-market acquisitions and quick flips. Missing HOA money likely laundered through various shell accounts. It was systematic, profitable, and completely illegal. Friday's mail brought the final ultimatum. $12,200 in accumulated fines. 30 days to achieve compliance or face lien proceedings. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was done playing defense. Time to burn down their whole operation. Friday afternoon, I was replacing a circuit breaker at a dental office when the process server found me. Young guy in a cheap suit, apologetic smile, thick envelope that felt like a death sentence. "Marcus Brennan, you've been served." My hands were still chalky with drywall dust as I opened it. The letterhead screamed expensive trouble. Blackstone and Associates, litigation specialists. Vivian had hired the kind of downtown firm that billed more per hour than I made in a week. The lawsuit was surgical in its cruelty. Breach of community covenant, seeking $25,000 in damages for community disruption, plus an immediate injunction to prevent me from living on my own property. The character assassination cut deep. Pattern of aggressive behavior, intimidation of female board members, ongoing threat to neighborhood safety. Walking into my house with those papers felt like carrying poison. Riley was at the kitchen table, tongue sticking out in concentration over her math homework, her blonde hair catching the afternoon light streaming through the window I'd cleaned just for her visit. She looked up, saw my expression, and her 8-year-old intuition kicked in immediately. "Dad, what's wrong?" I folded the papers, manufactured a smile that probably fooled nobody. "Just some boring adult stuff, kiddo." But Riley's too smart for her own good. "Are we going to lose our house?" The question hit like touching a live wire. Here I was, trying to give her stability after years of apartment living, and instead I dragged her into a nightmare that could cost us everything. That night, after Riley fell asleep clutching her stuffed elephant, I sat on the porch steps feeling like the world's worst father. The October air carried wood smoke from someone's fireplace, mixing with the distant hum of highway traffic and my own crushing sense of failure. Tommy found me there at 10 p.m., six-pack in hand, and that stubborn expression that meant he wasn't leaving until we fixed this. "Since when do Brennan men quit fights?" He cracked 2 beers, handed me one, settled his bulk on the concrete step. "Since they hired lawyers that cost more than my truck." So we find another angle. Tommy had spent 20 years fixing engines before his back gave out. He understood when systems were rigged against you. "What about that neighbor lady, the one who used to work in law?" Mrs. Ivy's kitchen light was still on. Through her window I could see her grading papers at her table, probably staying up late like she had for 30 years as a teacher before becoming a paralegal. Saturday morning, I knocked on her door with gas station donuts in desperation. She took one look at the legal papers, ushered me into her kitchen without a word. "Show me everything," she said, clearing space among her neat stacks of books that smelled like old paper and accumulated wisdom. For 3 hours, Mrs. Ivy dissected that lawsuit like she was performing surgery. Her jasmine tea grew cold as she cross-referenced statutes, her finger tracing legal citations with practiced efficiency. "This is amateur hour," she said finally, tapping the papers with a pen. "They're rushing, making basic assumptions." She pulled out a thick reference book, pages marked with decades of use. "Look, they claim the HOA has standing to enforce these restrictions, but where's their proof of legal incorporation? Don't all HOAs have that? Every HOA must be properly incorporated and maintain active registration to have enforcement power. Basic corporate law." Her smile held the promise of revenge. "Has anyone verified this HOA actually exists as a legal entity?" The bitter taste of realization mixed with Mrs. Ivy's green tea. In all my research, I'd never questioned the HOA's basic legitimacy, just assumed it was legal because it existed. "Elena Rodriguez was my friend," Mrs. Ivy continued, her voice hardening. "Vivian drove her family out 3 years ago with complaints about commercial cooking smells from their home kitchen. Elena never fought back because she trusted the system. I've regretted not helping ever since." Sunday morning, Mrs. Ivy and I walked into the county courthouse like investigators closing a case. The record search cost $12 and 40 minutes of waiting in plastic chairs that squeaked every time we moved. What we found was worth every penny and every uncomfortable minute. Willowbrook Estates, HOA, Incorporated. March 15th, 1987. Everything looked legitimate until Mrs. Ivy spotted the clause buried on page 4 of the original development agreement. "Authority expires after 25 years unless renewed by majority vote of property owners," she read aloud, her voice barely containing excitement. I did the math. March 15th, 1987, plus 25 years. March 15th, 2012, 11 years ago. The HOA had been operating without legal authority for over a decade. Every fine, every violation, every threat, all based on an expired corporate charter nobody had bothered to renew. Mrs. Ivy's triumphant smile could have lit the courthouse. "Marcus, Vivian Ashworth has no more legal authority than the pizza delivery guy." Walking out into the crisp autumn air that suddenly tasted like vindication, I realized Vivian had built her empire on quicksand. Time to watch it all sink. Monday morning, Mrs. Ivy called before 7 a.m., her voice vibrating with barely contained excitement. "Marcus, get over here now. I found the smoking gun." I threw on yesterday's work clothes and jogged across the frost-covered yard, my breath visible in the October chill. Mrs. Ivy's kitchen looked like a detective's evidence room, documents scattered everywhere, laptop screens glowing, coffee growing cold in forgotten mugs. "I couldn't sleep," she said, adjusting reading glasses that had left red marks on her nose. "Kept digging through county financial records. Look at this." She pointed to 2 documents side by side. The 2019 HOA disclosure showed reserves of $127,000. The 2023 quarterly report Patricia had mentioned showed $12,000, not $73,000 missing. $115,000 gone. The numbers hit like ice water in my veins. Jesus Christ. It gets worse. Mrs. Ivy clicked through browser tabs with the efficiency of someone who'd spent decades navigating legal databases. Derek's company didn't buy 8 houses. He bought 14 properties in Willowbrook over 5 years. My brain started calculating involuntarily. 14 houses, conservative $25,000 profit per flip, plus the embezzled funds. We were looking at over $500,000 in organized theft. "But this is what made me call you," she said, pulling up bank records that made my stomach drop. Monthly transfers from the HOA account, $8,000, $12,000, $9,500, all going to Willowbrook Property Management, LLC. Same routing number as Derek's real estate company. "They've been bleeding the community dry for years," Mrs. Ivy continued, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Fake property management fees for services never performed. Classic embezzlement with a paper trail." The bitter taste of morning coffee mixed with the realization of how completely we'd all been played. How did nobody catch this? Because Vivian controls the financial reports, shows doctored numbers to the board while Derek drains everything behind the scenes. Mrs. Ivy pulled up a newspaper article, the headline making my blood pressure spike. HOA president resigns amid financial scandal. The photo showed a younger Vivian with different hair, different name. Vivian Blackwood, forced to resign from Sunset Meadows HOA after $200,000 went missing. She moved here, changed her name to Ashworth, and started the same operation. My phone buzzed with Patricia's panicked text. Emergency meeting tonight. Vivian pushing special assessment vote. Says it's urgent. Mrs. Ivy read over my shoulder, her jasmine perfume mixing with the smell of heated printer toner as she ran off more copies. She's in full panic mode, knows legal challenges are coming, trying to grab one final score. Or bankrupt me specifically. Both. But she doesn't know we've uncovered her financial crimes, or that her HOA died legally 11 years ago. That afternoon, I organized the evidence with shaking hands. Bank transfers, property records, the expired incorporation, news articles about her previous fraud conviction. Mrs. Ivy helped create a timeline that would make prosecutors' mouths water. This is federal territory, she said, sealing documents in manila envelopes. RICO violations, wire fraud, mail fraud, civil rights violations. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit loves cases this clean. I thought about my divorce lawyer's advice from years ago. When fighting someone with more money and power, don't play their game. Change the rules entirely. How fast can we get this to federal prosecutors? My friend Elena works white-collar crime at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Mrs. Ivy was already dialing. But Marcus, once we make this call, everything changes. This becomes a federal investigation. Through my kitchen window, I could see Riley's bedroom where she'd finally gotten to sleep in her own space, all the families Vivian had destroyed, the systematic theft poisoning our community. Make the call. That evening, watching Vivian's BMW glide into the community center parking lot, I felt something new. Absolute certainty. She thought she was attending another rigged vote to squeeze money from desperate homeowners. Instead, she was walking into her last meeting as a free woman. Tuesday morning, my kitchen transformed from breakfast table to war room. Mrs. Ivy arrived with a banker's box full of legal documents and the focused intensity of someone who'd spent 30 years watching bullies win. Until now. Elena's coming at noon, she announced, spreading FBI contact cards across my table like she was dealing a winning poker hand. She's bringing backup. Elena Martinez walked through my front door at exactly noon, carrying a briefcase and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from spending 15 years putting white-collar criminals in federal prison. Compact, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Mrs. Ivy says you've uncovered organized fraud, she said, setting up a digital recorder without wasting time on pleasantries. Walk me through everything. For 2 hours, I laid out our evidence while the smell of Mrs. Ivy's jasmine tea mixed with the tension of explaining systematic theft to someone with the power to actually stop it. Elena took notes in precise handwriting, asking questions that proved she understood exactly how deep this went. The systematic targeting makes this RICO territory, she said finally, closing her notebook with the satisfaction of a hunter who'd just spotted perfect prey. Organized conspiracy across multiple victims using fraudulent legal authority. She explained RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, like she was teaching a masterclass in taking down criminals. Originally designed to destroy organized crime families, but it worked just as well against suburban fraudsters running fake HOAs. Think of it like this, Elena continued, her eyes lighting up with prosecutors' passion. Every fake violation notice, every forced sale, every embezzled dollar becomes part of one giant criminal enterprise. Instead of prosecuting individual incidents, we destroy the whole operation. Mrs. Ivy had been busy networking through her legal contacts. By Wednesday, we had victim statements from 3 other states where Vivian had run identical scams before moving to our neighborhood. Each story followed the same playbook. Infiltrate HOA leadership, target vulnerable families, steal community funds while forcing below-market sales. 8 years, 4 communities, same pattern, Mrs. Ivy explained, showing Elena a timeline that looked like a serial killer's progression chart. She's been perfecting this con, always moving before anyone connects the dots. Thursday brought FBI agent Sarah Walsh, a financial crimes specialist who walked into my kitchen carrying search warrant templates and the systematic approach that would make any electrician proud. She spread surveillance photos across my table. Derek entering banks, Vivian meeting with real estate agents, both of them living far beyond any legitimate HOA president's means. Financial criminals panic when they realize they're exposed, Agent Walsh explained. her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen desperate people do stupid things. Evidence disappears, money gets transferred to offshore accounts, witnesses suddenly develop amnesia. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. Elena would present our evidence to a federal grand jury seeking conspiracy and fraud indictments. Agent Walsh would coordinate simultaneous raids on Derek's office, their home, and every bank account they'd used to launder stolen money. But they needed one final piece: real-time evidence of ongoing criminal activity. "The special assessment vote," Elena said, tapping the emergency board meeting notice with her pen. "If we can document them actively committing fraud while under investigation, it strengthens every conspiracy charge." That's when Mrs. Ivy suggested something that made my heart race with equal parts terror and excitement. "Marcus should wear a wire." Agent Walsh nodded approvingly. "Get Vivian talking about the money, the property sales, anything connecting her to Derek's company. Federal juries love audio evidence. Makes conviction almost automatic." Friday afternoon, I sat in an FBI field office while a technician who looked young enough to be Riley's babysitter taped recording equipment to my chest. The device felt cold against my skin, but the weight of finally having equal weapons in this fight was intoxicating. "Keep her talking about finances," Agent Walsh coached, her voice steady and reassuring. "Let her explain the assessment, discuss property values, mention any arrangements with Derek. Don't push. Let her hang herself with her own words." Elena had been building our legal arsenal like a general preparing for war. Asset freezing orders ready to lock down Derek's accounts. Search warrants prepared for bank records, communication logs, property files. Victim compensation claims drafted for every family they'd destroyed. "The state licensing board loves fraud convictions," Elena added, her smile sharp as surgical steel. "Derek's real estate license becomes toilet paper the moment we file charges." That evening, sitting on my porch watching Riley chase fireflies in the backyard that was finally, legally, completely ours, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: absolute confidence. The October air carried wood smoke and dying leaves, but also something sweeter, the scent of justice finally within reach. Mrs. Ivy joined me on the steps, both of us watching Riley's laughter echo off the house I'd nearly lost. "You know what the best part will be?" she said quietly. "What's that?" "Every family they drove out gets restitution. Every stolen dollar comes back with interest." Tomorrow, Vivian would attend what she thought was another rigged meeting to squeeze money from vulnerable homeowners. Instead, she'd be walking into a federal wiretapping operation that would end her criminal career permanently. Saturday morning, I stepped outside to grab the newspaper and found all 4 tires on my truck slashed. Not just punctured, systematically destroyed with surgical precision, rubber hanging in strips like someone had taken personal satisfaction in every cut. Riley was finishing her cereal by the kitchen window when she spotted the carnage. "Dad, what happened to your truck?" The metallic taste of pure rage flooded my mouth as I called Agent Walsh, my hands shaking with contained fury. Her response was immediate and professional. "Don't touch anything. This is witness intimidation. Federal territory now." By noon, FBI crime scene techs were photographing my driveway while neighbors suddenly found urgent yard work requiring their immediate attention. Mrs. Ivy appeared with sandwiches and whispered intelligence. Vivian's made 4 drive-bys since dawn, clipboard out, taking notes like she's conducting surveillance. That afternoon brought psychological warfare I hadn't anticipated. My phone started buzzing with calls from Riley's school, her soccer coach, even our pizza place, all asking about concerning reports they'd received. Someone had flooded social media with fake accounts posting detailed accusations: violent criminal, unsafe father, dangerous neighbor. The posts included photoshopped police reports showing fictional domestic violence arrests, doctored court documents claiming I'd lost custody due to substance abuse and child endangerment. The campaign was professional, coordinated, designed to destroy my reputation before anyone could verify the lies. But Saturday evening brought the attack that crossed every line. Riley and I were watching her favorite movie, sharing a bowl of popcorn that still smelled like movie theater butter, when the rock crashed through our front window. Safety glass exploded across our living room in a shower of crystalline fragments that caught the lamplight like deadly confetti. Riley's scream pierced through me worse than any electrical shock I'd ever received. She buried her face in my chest, 8 years old and absolutely terrified, while I called 911 with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "Dad, are the bad people going to hurt us?" she whispered against my shirt. That question shattered something fundamental inside me. This wasn't about community standards anymore. This was domestic terrorism targeting my child. Sunday morning brought the cruelest escalation yet. Child Protective Services appeared at my door with clipboards and official expressions, investigating an anonymous complaint about unsafe living conditions and child endangerment. The caseworker was apologetic but thorough, photographing the broken window, asking Riley gentle questions that clearly followed a script someone had provided about electrical hazards and improper supervision. "We investigate every complaint," she explained while Riley clung to my leg like a lifeline. The caller provided very specific details about your household situation. I handed her Agent Walsh's business card. "You need to contact the FBI before this goes any further." While she made her calls, my electrician's brain caught something crucial. The CPS complaint referenced specific details about my garage workshop setup, details only someone who'd been inside my house could possibly know. Someone had violated our home. Monday brought financial warfare. My contractor's license was suspended pending investigation of safety violations and code infractions. The complaint was detailed, professional, and completely fabricated, but proving that would take weeks I didn't have. No license meant no work. No work meant no income. No income meant exactly the financial pressure Vivian needed to force us out. Tuesday morning, I discovered dead rats scattered across our front yard like some twisted Halloween decoration. The stench of decay mixed with morning dew as I tried to clean up the carnage before Riley woke up, my stomach churning with disgust and rage. Mrs. Ivy appeared with intelligence that connected the final dots. "I've been photographing Derek's office," she said, showing me telephoto shots of 3 men in expensive suits entering the building repeatedly. "They don't look like real estate professionals." Wednesday evening, those same men found me. I was finishing a rewiring job at Tony's restaurant, one of my last paying gigs before the license suspension, when they cornered me in the darkened parking lot. The smell of kitchen grease mixed with fierce sweat as 3 professionals who looked like they'd stepped from a mob movie surrounded my truck. "Mr. Brennan," the leader's voice carried the calm menace of someone accustomed to making problems disappear. "You're causing difficulties for important people. Time to reconsider your position." The wire taped to my chest captured every word as they detailed exactly what would happen if I didn't withdraw all legal challenges and sell my house within 30 days. Their threats were specific, professional, and absolutely terrifying in their casual certainty. But they'd made one fatal error. Threatening a federal witness on tape isn't harassment, it's conspiracy to commit extortion. That night, Agent Walsh arrived with a tactical team and arrest warrants that would make several people's evening extremely unpleasant. "Marcus," she said, her grim smile promising justice, "you just handed us a federal racketeering case. Those men threatened a witness in an ongoing investigation. That's 20 years minimum each." Standing in my driveway, watching FBI agents prepare to dismantle Vivian's criminal empire, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Absolute certainty that the nightmare was finally ending. Tomorrow's board meeting would be Vivian's last performance before the curtain fell permanently. Thursday morning, I woke up to find Vivian standing in my backyard, not near the fence, not on the property line, standing 15 feet from my kitchen window, staring directly into my house with the unblinking intensity of someone who'd finally stopped pretending to be rational. Riley was upstairs getting ready for school when I spotted the intrusion. Vivian wore her trademark clipboard and pearl earrings, but her usually perfect hair hung limp, her makeup smudged like she'd been crying. When our eyes met through the glass, she didn't look away. Instead, she smiled with the kind of expression that makes your blood turn cold. I called Agent Walsh immediately, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "She's on my property. Direct stalking now. Don't engage. Document everything. She's unraveling. Probably realizes arrests are imminent." The taste of morning coffee turned bitter as I watched Vivian finally walk away, moving with the jerky, unpredictable gait of someone whose carefully controlled world was disintegrating. By afternoon, her behavior had shifted from creepy to genuinely terrifying. Mrs. Ivy called with updates that made my skin crawl. Vivian was going door to door, warning neighbors about my violent criminal background and the federal terrorism investigation that would destroy property values. "She's telling people you're planning to bomb the community center," Mrs. Ivy whispered. "Says the FBI is here because you're a domestic terrorist, not because of any HOA issues." The audacity was breathtaking. Vivian was using her own criminal investigation as evidence of my dangerous behavior, spinning federal interest in her embezzlement as proof that I was the real threat to community safety. Thursday evening brought Derek's most desperate gambit yet. He appeared at my door carrying an envelope thick with cash, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, expensive suit wrinkled, silver hair uncombed, hands shaking with barely controlled panic. "Marcus, let's resolve this like businessmen," he said, voice cracking as he held up the envelope. 50,000, cash, clean bills, walk away tonight, and this all disappears. The wire under my shirt captured every syllable as Derek's composure completely crumbled. Vivian's not thinking rationally anymore. This situation has escalated beyond reason, but you and I can be practical about solutions. I let him talk, let him construct his own federal prison sentence word by word. He detailed how HOA violations would vanish, how my contractor's license would be mysteriously reinstated, how all these community misunderstandings could be resolved through proper financial consideration. "Between us," he continued, glancing around like Agent Walsh might be hiding in my hedges, "Vivian's lost all perspective. But I'm a rational businessman. 50,000 solves everyone's problems permanently." When I didn't immediately grab the money, his mask slipped entirely. "You don't understand what you're dealing with here. Vivian has connections to people who don't negotiate politely. Take the cash. Relocate somewhere pleasant. Give your daughter a fresh start before this gets uglier." The threat couldn't have been clearer. Accept the bribe or face consequences that would make previous harassment look like gentle persuasion. Friday brought the most violating escalation yet. Returning from Riley's school pickup, I discovered my security system had been professionally disabled. Not vandalized or obviously damaged, just silently, expertly neutralized by someone with sophisticated technical knowledge. More disturbing, nothing appeared stolen. Whoever had violated my home wanted me to know they could access our private space whenever they chose. The psychological warfare was perfectly calculated to create maximum fear with minimal evidence. Then I checked Riley's bedroom. Someone had been on her bed, the indentation still visible in her carefully arranged pillows. They'd moved her stuffed animals, repositioned her books, violated the one sanctuary that should have been purely hers. The smell of unfamiliar cologne lingered in her room like a threat. The taste of helpless rage flooded my mouth as I realized how completely they'd crossed from financial crime to child endangerment. Agent Walsh's response was immediate. "Pack overnight bags. Safe house protocol starts now." That evening, while FBI technicians swept my home for surveillance devices, Mrs. Ivy arrived with intelligence that explained Vivian's accelerating breakdown. Derek had filed for divorce 3 days earlier, trying to legally distance himself before federal charges landed. "She's losing everything simultaneously," Mrs. Ivy explained, her voice mixing sympathy with satisfaction. "Husband, freedom, the entire life she built, through criminal activity. The woman who'd systematically destroyed other families was watching her own world collapse in real time. Desperation had replaced calculation, making her exponentially more dangerous and unpredictable." Saturday morning, Agent Walsh called with news that changed everything. Vivian attempted to flee the country last night. Airport security intercepted her with $127,000 cash and a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. She was in federal custody on obstruction and flight risk charges. The emergency board meeting would proceed, but Vivian would be watching from a detention cell instead of running the show. "Her entire network is compromised," Agent Walsh continued. "Derek's cooperating, the hired muscle is arrested, every financial account frozen. Tonight's meeting wouldn't be Vivian's final performance as HOA dictator. It would be the community's first gathering as free citizens." Saturday evening, 6 p.m. sharp, I walked into the Willowbrook Community Center for what everyone thought would be just another rigged HOA meeting. Instead, they were about to witness the public execution of a criminal empire. The room was packed beyond capacity, 200 residents crammed into a space designed for maybe 80. Word had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Something big was happening tonight. Folding chairs lined every wall, people stood 3 deep in the back, and the air hummed with nervous energy that tasted like anticipation, mixed with fear. Vivian's empty chair sat at the head table like a throne waiting for a queen who would never return. The remaining board members, Patricia, Jim, and Sandra, shuffled papers nervously, clearly having no idea how to run a meeting without their dictatorial leader. Agent Walsh sat in the back corner, clipboard in hand, looking like any other concerned resident. But I could see the subtle bulge of her service weapon and the barely concealed satisfaction of someone about to watch justice unfold in real time. Mrs. Ivy had saved me a seat in the front row, her eyes bright with anticipation. "Half the neighborhood is here," she whispered. "Word got out that federal agents have been asking questions all week." At exactly 6:15, Patricia cleared her throat and called the meeting to order with a voice that shook like autumn leaves. "We're gathered tonight to discuss the proposed special assessment for community improvements." That's when I stood up. "Before we discuss any financial matters," I said, my voice cutting through the nervous chatter like a blade, "I think everyone deserves to know where their money has really been going." The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and somebody's coffee pot gurgling in the back kitchen. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on me as I pulled out the manila folder that would change everything. For the past 11 years, this community has been systematically defrauded by an HOA that legally ceased to exist in 2012. I held up the incorporation documents, my voice growing stronger with each word. Vivian Ashworth and her husband Derek have stolen over $400,000 from this community while forcing families to sell their homes through harassment and fake legal threats. The explosion of voices was immediate. Gasps, angry shouts, demands for explanation. Patricia banged her gavel uselessly as the crowd erupted into chaos. "That's not possible," Jim protested from the board table, his face pale as printer paper. "Vivian showed us all the financial reports." "Vivian showed you fabricated documents," I interrupted, spreading bank records across my table so the front rows could see. While claiming the HOA had $85,000 in reserves, she and Derek were stealing $8,000 to $12,000 monthly through fake property management fees. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up from the middle section, her voice carrying the pain of someone who'd lost everything. "They forced us out 3 years ago. Constant violations, threats, harassment until we couldn't take it anymore. We lost our home because of these people." That opened the floodgates. Sarah Kim, the motorcycle owner, detailed her forced sale. The elderly veteran explained how his medical transport van became grounds for daily fines. Family after family stood to share stories of systematic persecution designed to steal their homes and their dignity. The room's energy shifted from confusion to righteous fury, the smell of collective anger mixing with stale coffee and fluorescent light heat. "Where's Vivian?" someone shouted from the back. "Where's the woman who's been terrorizing our neighbors?" Agent Walsh chose that moment to reveal herself, standing with the smooth confidence of federal authority. Vivian Ashworth was arrested last night attempting to flee the country with $127,000 in cash stolen from your community. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Patricia's voice, barely a whisper. "Arrested? Federal charges of conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, civil rights violations, and organized racketeering." Agent Walsh continued, her voice carrying the weight of justice finally served. "Derek Ashworth is also in custody. Their entire operation has been dismantled." The room erupted again, but this time with cheers, applause, and the kind of celebration that comes from watching bullies finally face consequences. People hugged strangers, wiped away tears of relief, and laughed with the pure joy of freedom. I stood at the center of it all, thinking about Riley sleeping safely in the FBI safe house, about all the families who'd been driven from their homes, about the months of terror that were finally ending. "This community deserves better than criminals masquerading as leaders," I said when the applause died down. "Every stolen dollar will be returned. Every family that was driven out will receive compensation. And we're going to build the kind of neighborhood where people like my daughter can grow up safely." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Neighbors who'd never spoken to each other embraced like family. Mrs. Ivy wiped tears from her eyes while gripping my arm like a lifeline. Channel 7. News cameras had arrived sometime during the chaos, capturing every moment of Vivian's empire crashing down in spectacular public fashion. Outside, federal agents were loading boxes of evidence from Derek's car, while neighbors watched justice being served in real time. The nightmare was over. The healing could finally begin. 6 months later, I'm standing in my backyard watching Riley chase butterflies through the garden Mrs. Ivy helped us plant, breathing air that finally tastes like home instead of warfare. The trials were everything I'd dreamed they'd be. Vivian got 8 years in federal prison. Conspiracy, embezzlement, civil rights violations. The judge's words still echo. "You systematically terrorized families in their own homes. That's not community leadership, that's domestic terrorism." Derek received 12 years for racketeering and fraud. Turns out federal judges really don't appreciate real estate agents who use fake HOAs to steal from working families. His perfect hair looked less impressive in orange jumpsuit photos that made the front page of every local paper. But the sweetest justice came through restitution. Every family Vivian destroyed received full compensation plus punitive damages that made Derek's property empire evaporate like morning dew. Maria Rodriguez bought back into our neighborhood, 3 houses down from where she'd been forced to leave. Watching her kids play in the same yard they'd lost brought tears to my eyes that tasted like vindication. The financial recovery exceeded every expectation. Asset forfeiture recovered $650,000 from their criminal network, hidden accounts, shell companies, luxury purchases bought with stolen community funds. Every penny returned to victims with federal interest rates that transformed their theft into the most expensive mistake of their lives. Patricia stepped up as our new board president, working with Mrs. Ivy to create transparent, democratic leadership. No more secret meetings, no more fabricated financial reports, no more one person wielding power like a weapon against neighbors. We're going to govern with open books and open hearts, Patricia announced at our first legitimate meeting, held in my living room because even our community center needed healing after years of Vivian's toxic management. Our story became a catalyst for statewide reform. Marcus's law requires HOA financial transparency and prevents discriminatory enforcement. 3 other states adopted similar legislation after our documentary, Fighting for Home, won awards and changed national conversations about housing justice. My electrical business flourished with genuine community support. Neighbors who'd once watched silently as I was harassed became my best customers, hiring me for projects that rebuilt not just their electrical systems, but the trust that makes neighborhoods feel like home. Riley's transformation moves me most. The terrified 8-year-old who'd asked, "Are we going to lose our house?" had become a confident 9-year-old who invites friends over every weekend, filling our home with the beautiful chaos I'd always envisioned. "Dad, Mrs. Ivy taught me how to research public records," she announced one morning, dirt covered from working in our community garden planted where Derek's foreclosed office used to stand. She says knowledge is the best weapon against bullies. Mrs. Ivy had become family, teaching Riley everything from legal research to dumpling recipes. Their bond proved the most important truth. Real communities aren't built by rules and regulations, but by neighbors who choose to care for each other. The Home Justice Foundation we established helps families fight HOA discrimination nationwide. 17 cases so far, providing legal assistance and proving that bullies with fake authority can be defeated by organized communities willing to stand together. Last week brought a call from Ohio, another desperate father facing identical harassment. Same playbook: escalating fines, discriminatory enforcement, systematic intimidation designed to force families from their homes. "We've documented everything," he said, voice carrying that familiar mixture of fear and determination. "But we don't know how to fight people with money and lawyers." Riley looked up from homework as I packed recording equipment and legal templates. "Another family needs help?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Another family that deserves to keep their home. When you come back, can we make Mrs. Ivy's cookies? I want to surprise her." Standing in the kitchen of the house I'd nearly lost, watching my daughter plan acts of kindness while I prepare to help another family fight for their American dream, I taste something sweeter than any victory. The knowledge that home isn't just about owning property. Home is about belonging somewhere safe, where your neighbors protect instead of persecute you, where your children can grow up believing that justice isn't just a word, it's a promise communities make to each other. Drop your HOA nightmare story below. You'd be amazed how many neighbors share your pain. Remember, you don't have to fight alone. There are resources, laws, and people who've walked this path before you. Hit subscribe if this story helped you understand your homeowner rights. We're building an army of families who refuse to be bullied in their own neighborhoods. The next HOA horror story we expose might be in your town.